Hi, I'm Waifu, and I'm going to be running Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition, New Game Normal. So this run is a new game run, which means you don't take anything from previous runs into the run, and on the normal difficulty. We're going to jump right into the action right away, showcasing one of the styles in this game, Royal Guard. Now this style allows you to do stuff like that, and this. Basically, it's the style that's all about guarding and perfectly releasing to do tons of damage. So obviously that's really good for a speedrun, being able to eviscerate enemies in one hit. But that's not all it can do. It also can cancel animations. For example, when I'm comboing these red enemies, I'm doing 1, 2, cancel, 1, 2, cancel, 1, 2, and that's by pressing the block button, which I have mapped to B, interrupting the second swing of the combo and replacing it with a block. This is because the game wants you to be able to block pretty much anything and be able to react fast with the blocking mechanics. So it lets you cancel pretty much any animation right into a block. And because of that, we can use that to our advantage and get a whole lot of DPS out very quickly, and that makes it a very cool run with a lot of skill base. It's also very hard. That zoom attack that you saw me do, that I just did right there, you only have a 3-frame window to hit that. If you do it too late, you'll get hit. If you do it too early, you'll miss. So it's pretty important in some scenarios that I hit those. Nothing too major, it's just for the time save. So this game is based mostly on its combat. So 90% of the rooms in the game are just going to be about eliminating the enemies as fast as possible. So I said it's about blocking and releasing. Basically, you saw me do there is you can block literally anything in this game except for I think one single attack if you have the proper timing. And so you can do cool stuff like block explosions. And when you block, there's a meter up at the top left by my health, those little balls. They'll fill up and start charging. And the more they charge, the more damage your attacks are going to do when you release. And that's mission 2 done. So I'm going to try to get an S rank on the first 2 missions. This game has a ranking system. Basically, the better you play, the quicker you beat the mission, the more orbs you collect, the more stylish you were, the less damage you take, the better rank you'll get. And since I got an S rank on the first 2 missions, I will be able to buy Stinger 1 and 2, which are going to be our main movement tech for the early game and the majority of the game. This move allows us to fly forward and do a sick little attack there. And I'm actually canceling that as well with Royal Guard. And speaking of canceling with Royal Guard, we're going to show off something really cool here. Canceling shotgun with Royal Guard. Because we're canceling that shooting animation with the guard, we can shoot the shotgun way faster than it's supposed to be able to. And this does a ton of damage, as you can imagine. I just gotta clean up this room of enemies. Now what I like about this run is it's very free flow. There's not like 100% the best way to do any room. And even if there is, it's not a huge deal if you miss it just a little bit. Like that didn't go according to plan, but as long as you're able to hit your cancels and try to optimize it the best you can while adapting, that's really cool, especially with Royal Guard, because you just will want to do the combat as fast as possible, and whenever you can, go ahead and snag a release in there or a guard to go ahead and build that up for later. So here we got our first boss in the game. This is Cerberus. He's a 3-headed doggo. He's pretty cute, but he's also really scary. This is one of the harder fights in the run, primarily because we don't really have any tools at our disposal yet. We only have Stinger, that's our only upgrade, and nice, you fell. That's exactly what you want. And we only have level 1 Royal Guard. In this game, your styles level up with you. Nice release. Your styles level up with you, and Royal Guard becomes significantly easier to time your attacks due to a special mechanic that gets introduced later when you get level 2. But until then, you basically just have to stand and just have really good timing. But the way that the hitboxes work in this game, if you... Oh, I died. Well, that's a perfect opportunity to explain a thing called difficulty adjustment. Basically, when you die, certain elements of the game get a lot easier. One of them being bosses tend to be a lot slower, particular ones, and take way less hits to kill, like this one for sure. As you can see, I'm just demolishing him. Fortunately, this only really affects the run in the instance that you die. You don't actually route around it at all, because it is slower to die than it is to just beat the boss first try. But like I said, this is one of the harder bosses in the game, because we don't really have any tools at our disposal. And there we go. And now that we beat that boss, we got a nice little toy. We got the 3-headed nunchuckers. And that's going to let us show off another canceling ability that we have. It's called switch canceling. Kind of like you cancel with guard. It's the same thing. You interrupt your animation, but instead of by pressing guard, this time you do it by pressing the trigger to switch weapons and then start comboing with that weapon. So basically you're switching back and forth between the two weapons, so there's no downtime between your damage. That's the idea, at least. Just gotta get through these enemies real quick. Basically, if you don't know the story of this game, right now we are Dante, a half human, half demon devil hunter who is just chilling at his house, at his shop, what he haven't named yet. And then his brother Virgil comes flying off of a tower in the middle of the city, unleashing demons everywhere. And now you're just gonna go try to beat him up. That's basically it. That room wasn't a really good showcase of switch canceling. Oh, oops. That was close. Almost missed it. But this room should be a better example. So each time I'm 1-2 switch, 1-2 switch, 1-2 switch. And there's a lot of different weapons in this game, and they all have their own unique rhythm to optimally do switch canceling. This is just happens to be the first one we get, so it's the one we're stuck with for now. But as soon as we get the next weapon, we're going to switch right away again, because it's a lot more useful. So you're going to see me, every chance I get, hugging doors, and that's because doors will actually try to hurt you in this game when they're locked. And we use that to our advantage by parrying them and getting a release off of that. And speaking of getting a release, this room is all about that. The whole point of this room is to... there's a couple of Hell Wraths, which are those big explodey boys that we saw earlier. And basically getting them to explode on the enemies, doing a bunch of damage. And also capturing the release from them and using that to do big damage. That was unfortunate. I accidentally switched to my shotgun, which I wasn't supposed to do, because I needed to get the release from that wrap to fight this boss, the Centipede, which is one of the only RNG bosses in the game. You're supposed to use that release that you get from him to help 2-cycle this boss, and I kind of whiffed it. So it's a little bit scary now, but hopefully it won't be too bad. Okay, that's decent. Let's see if we can get the 2-cycle still. Nice. Saved it. Usually that's about how this 2-cycle goes. You can kill him a lot easier, but for not having the release, that's a huge win on my part. Because the release does a lot of damage, as you saw earlier. So in the next mission, we're going to be fighting a few new enemy types. Firstly, these blood goyles. They're very interesting because you can't actually hit them with melee until you shoot them. Otherwise, they will not turn into stone. And if they don't turn into stone when you hit them, they'll split in half. And they don't actually lose any health when that happens. Like that. Sometimes it's really hard to avoid. So obviously you don't want that to happen because it makes it really hard to kill them fast. Of course. One of the more annoying enemies in the game for sure. And now, this is the special edition of the game on the HD collection. And this is a boss that is only in the special edition of the game. This is the Jester. He's a cool little addition. This is actually the only part. There's 3 different times you can fight him. This is the only one that's required. And there's a couple different patterns he could give you. This is the worst one, I believe. We'll see what he gives me on the second one. Ideally, you want a pattern from him where you can parry the blocks or the balls, so that when he's vulnerable, you can get a release off. That wasn't too bad. Nice little 2-cycle. So especially in the late game, a lot of the bosses are going to revolve around getting a certain amount of what we call Devil Trigger, which we don't get until Mission 7, and then using your release wisely. But at this point, it's not a huge deal. Now we just gotta traverse this maze of a tower. Collect some key items. The holdovers from Resident Evil games are very strong, even on the 3rd installment of this game. Collecting weird keys and going around. And one more room full of enemies. Oh, I missed him. Thankfully, the enemies always spawn in fixed patterns, and that goes for every single room in the game, which is very fortunate. Otherwise, it'd be very annoying having to try to predict where they're gonna spawn. We get a free ride here. Nice. The movement in this game is a bit clunky, especially the platforming, which you'll see a lot of later. Devil May Cry games are never known for their platforming, and unfortunately you have to do some required bits of platforming. One huge notable one later on. So I was talking about getting S ranks earlier. We don't have any really required S ranks Just those two at the beginning are very helpful. The money route's not actually that tight in this game, which is nice because you can just focus on your execution for the most part. But there is a couple of places where it does benefit you to try to get more money. This place being one of them. This is a classic Capcom elevator where if there's too many enemies on the elevator at once, it'll start to fall. And we try to kill them in a stylish way because this game has an interesting mechanic. The style meter that you saw on the right there that said Smoke a 6 style, the higher that is, the more currency you actually get when you kill the enemies. And so you try to style on them to get more money. So I'm going to focus on this boss real quick. Alright, very nice. That was a good fight. That boss is really interesting. It's got a lot going on. I'll try to decompress that over this next mission. Basically, there's two bosses, and you have to fight them both at the same time. But they have a pretty unique gimmick. If you kill one of them before the other, and you don't finish them off at the same time, then what'll happen is one will grab the other one's sword, and they'll combine, which has a 20-second cutscene that's totally unskippable. So we try to kill them before that happens, as well as he gets powered up and is a lot harder to kill once that happens. So we try to avoid that at all costs. I did a couple things there. I was shotgun canceling to do a ton of damage, but I was also switching between the targets back and forth. And that's because you can knock their swords out of their hands, as you saw. And the way you did that is to parry them at the right time, back and forth twice. And once you hit it twice, the sword flies out of their hands. The problem is, if you do it too perfectly, you'll do a gold release like I was doing earlier. But in that fight, you don't want to do that because you'll zoom through them and you won't be able to keep comboing them. So you want to do the releases bad on purpose so that you can keep them together. It's definitely a strange fight, but it's a really cool one when done right. And it is still early on in the game, so we don't have that many tools yet. Once we get past mission 7, a lot of the game's going to become easier because we'll have that devil trigger to do a bunch more damage. And poor Artemis. We leave a weapon behind there because it's optional. But rip Artemis. So this is mission 7. This is like the showcase of what this run can be difficulty-wise. It's got a whole bunch of craziness. Now that we got Agni and Rudra, which is the weapon we got from fighting Agni and Rudra, it's actually their heads as swords, we can do a thing called jump canceling. Now, we could do jump canceling before, but we didn't really have any weapons that had good animations to jump cancel. But now that we have Agni and Rudra, we have Aerial Cross, which is that attack. And that attack is really good for jump canceling. It does a whole bunch of damage, and you can jump cancel it really fast. Now, jump canceling works the same way as weapon switch canceling or guard canceling, like we were doing earlier. But instead, you guessed it, you jump. In this game, you can jump off of enemies' heads, and that can actually cancel your attack animations. So you'll jump off their head, hit them, jump off their head, hit them, jump off their head, hit them, and just keep spamming that until they're dead. And the reason that's hard is because every time you jump, you go up, but you don't want to go so far up that you don't hit them. And that becomes particularly hard when you're trying to do it against greeds, which are the enemy that we're doing it against right now. These enemies, because their hitbox is really small. It's low to the ground, especially when they start to do their special attack, like this. And they also have another gimmick to them. They spawn more enemies. So if you don't do it right and you kill them too slow, you're going to end up with a room full of enemies, which is obviously very slow. Thankfully they just spawn lesser enemies. Nothing like too dangerous, at least in this room. But they could be very scary. And that's one of the reasons that this mission is so hard, because that jump canceling is very difficult to do well, and it's very, very punishing if you do it wrong, especially in this next room. This next room is the same room as the last room, except it doesn't spawn prides, which are those black enemies that you can kill in 3 hits. It spawns lusts, which are the red enemies that are really fast, and they take a lot more hits to kill. It's common to actually die in this room as well, but we'll see. It's not a huge deal if I do, it's like maybe a minute gone, but it is annoying. Alright, here we go. First one down. There's 2 more. They don't spawn until we kill the first wave. That was really good. Choked it a bit. Okay, I stopped one from spawning. That's good. We should be safe now. And there is one more room with those greeds in it. And then they won't show up for the rest of the game, which is fortunate. But they really come full force. This is the first mission that they appear, and thankfully it's the last mission that they're mandatory, because they are definitely one of the scarier enemies in the game, at least in the speedrun. Now we have a Vanguard, which was actually the first technically boss of the game, first mini boss. He had a health bar, but this guy's gonna show up a couple times. Very nice fight though. Jump canceling isn't only useful for him, it's a lot of enemies in the game. We're gonna use it a lot, especially when we get another weapon later on. So that's not the only thing that makes this mission scary and one of the harder ones in the game. We've reached the top of the tower, which means we gotta fight our brother Virgil, and our brother Virgil's really hard, and it basically comes down to a test of like pure get good, just block. Very good fight. So that's Virgil 1. That fight's really hard, so we did good there. Thankfully, he's consistent. He does pretty much the same thing every time, and there's a formula that you can apply to go ahead and fight him. But now that we did beat him, we unlocked Devil Trigger, which is what we're going to spend all the orbs that we ended up saving on up to this point on getting more of. So now under my health bar, there's those circles. Those are called Devil Trigger runes. Basically, the more you have, the longer you can be in Devil Trigger. And this game has a unique thing with its Devil Trigger that none of the other Devil May Cry games do. It has Devil Trigger explosions, which basically means if you charge your Devil Trigger by holding the Devil Trigger button, then you can release all of that power and waste all your Devil Trigger at once to do a huge damage boost. And that is going to be the other thing that we're going to do to make it so we get some really good quick kills. Getting some extra orbs here so that we can try to get a good 1 cycle or 1.5 cycle later on in this mission. So it might not make any sense because I skipped the cutscene, but Dante got defeated by Virgil, and that's what made him unleash his Devil Trigger, hence Dante's Awakening in the title of the game. And so Dante, in a fit of rage, jumps and starts running down the side of the building, and then jumps off into the open. And he gets eaten by a giant flying monster called the Leviathan, and that's what we're inside right now. We're currently battling our way through him, trying to get to the end, try to get out. And that means that the final boss of this section is going to be his intestines. It's a really cool boss. So here is one of these rooms that has a unique gimmick. Most of the rooms in this game are pretty straightforward, just kill the enemies and leave. But this one you have to give orbs to this center thing in order for it to give you an item so you can see in the dark and progress. And the fastest way to do that is by using Devil Trigger explosions, like I just did. And perfect guards, like we were doing this whole run, actually give you a whole lot of Devil Trigger. Devil Trigger regenerates when you either take damage, deal damage, or do a perfect guard. So that's very fortunate because we're going to be doing that a lot. And now that you see, earlier I leveled up my Royal Guard to level 2, and that means I have 2 little orbs there. And that means I can charge my shots, my releases up to a 2nd level. And this lets me do significantly more damage. You're going to see that in this next fight, where I will release, and it'll do a ton of damage, especially when you're under the influence of Devil Trigger, because Devil Trigger makes it so you regenerate health, take less damage, and deal more damage, as well as move faster. So we're gonna have to go for the 2 cycle here. Oh, I missed my release. Oops. Oh, that's fine. This is fine. Good 2 cycle. And that's mission 8. Now we saw we did crazy amounts of damage there, and that's the abusing Rail Guard along with that Devil Trigger. And that's how most of the rest of the bosses are going to go in this game, but that doesn't mean that they're easy. A lot of the bosses in this game, you have to make tight timings and hit some really hard blocks. So now we're in a new area. We're back in the tower. We're climbing our way back up to the top again. And there is a new enemy type. These are the spiders. As you can see, whenever I hit them with the fire sword, they catch on fire a bit, and that's because this game does have elemental damage. Agni and Rudra are fire and wind, In Cerberus, which we were using earlier, the nunchucks are ice, and certain enemies have different weaknesses to them. These weaknesses are not that huge, not nearly worth switching between them, so it's not going to be a huge deal, but it does help in certain scenarios, like ebony, or like the spiders, for instance. This is one of the few rooms in the game where you can actually just walk right through. I don't know if they did that intentionally or not, but like I said, those greeds, you don't have to any mandatory fights, but there are a few left, which is good because I hate them. This game has a lot of bosses. Almost one every mission, not quite. But we have another one on this level, and there's a cool quick cycle you can try to get, which I'll try. Will hope for it. But in order to get that, I'm gonna need to have full Devil Trigger and full release when I get to the beginning of the fight. So I'm gonna be trying to save up while I'm on the way. Okay, so I guess I'll explain taunting. You saw right there, I just taunted the enemy a bit. I told him to come on. In this game you can taunt your enemies, and it actually does help you. It's not just for style. Taunting increases your Devil Trigger, and it helps build it up. So when we can, we're going to be doing that to help route in that Devil Trigger, because it is extremely powerful, as you saw. Like every time an enemy dies and there's nothing left, just taunt. But it does look cool. So now we just gotta go ahead and travel to this boss and then fight it, and that's gonna be the end of the mission. And you gotta get there in style, so we do a little bit of a free ride, because it's fun. Woo! I was so stunned when I saw that you could do that in this game. It's in like one of the first cutscenes of the game, and you can actually do it. So this boss has a few interesting mechanics. You can't damage her unless her bats are gone. Oh, oops. So obviously, you gotta try to take the bats away. But you can actually make her fall over. Like that. So you could do a bunch more damage. There's only a few attacks that can actually make her fall over like that. If I would have gotten a good setup, we could have killed her right there with the 2 cycle, but I did not, unfortunately. And kiss cycle. When she gets really low on HP, she will teleport to the middle and try to give you a smooch. If she does, it does a ton of damage, and it actually refills her HP, so that's like absolute worst case scenario. Thankfully, if you have the Devil Trigger, she can't grab you, so it's a nice failsafe. That was still a good fight, though. It was really good. A lot of these cycles that I'm talking about that I may not be getting are really difficult and super hype. But they don't always save a super huge amount of time. Nothing that would make me go overestimate or anything. Woo! Woo! So we got a whole bunch of purple orbs, which increase our maximum devil trigger. And that's going to be the last time we buy items until the very end of the game. What's cool about this run is that you can beat most bosses faster by getting skill and being good than using items, especially since the items are really expensive in this game. There's only one boss that we kill almost exclusively with items, and that's at the very end of the game, and it's because he's not a very fun fight whatsoever. So it's not like Devil May Cry 1, where most of the bosses you kill by spamming holy waters or anything. You only kill one of the bosses by spamming holy waters. There are a few enemies in the game that aren't bosses that we use holy waters on, though. Sometimes we can opt to use a holy water in this section because these giant spiders are really annoying and inconsistent. But I'm going to opt to use it later instead on an even more annoying section of the game. On some Fallen. And there are some amazing cutscenes in this game. A lot of them are like pretty short as well. This might be some good ones to show because they're really fun. But I'm just gonna go ahead and stick to the run. So mission 11. Mission 11 is one of the harder missions in the game. This is because there's a boss at the end of it that has a super precise release that does like a third of his health, if not 2/3 of his health, depending on how you hit it. It's not super major, but it's a really good time save if I can hit it. But first we gotta make our way there, and we get some of the more annoying enemies in the game. This game is kind of a hodgepodge. It's got some fantastic enemy designs and some really bad ones, like these ones. These enemies have the amazing gimmick of you can't hit them when you're looking at them. What an insane, innovative mechanic that is really fun. So now we just got to push these blocks by hitting them with our big sword. That is literally the puzzle in this room. It's great. It's funny that this game tries to have puzzles sometimes. Now we got a nice little fight here with another Hell Vanguard, this big boy, and some more of those enemies from earlier that are super annoying. Nice. I used my Devil Trigger explosion there to catch some of them in the crossfire. Man, you're in a really bad spot there, sir. Thank you. Luckily I managed to kill those flying guys while fighting the Vanguard. Otherwise, It can get really annoying and messy as they'll just fly away. So upcoming, we got this gondola here. Unlike most gondolas, this one's actually not an auto-scroller. If you kill all the enemies, it just ends, which is really cool. It doesn't just send endless enemies at you, which means we can optimize it a bit. And around this part of the game is where you're going to see me really taking advantage of that Devil Trigger explosion. Routing it like that. So try to kill these enemies as fast as possible. Oh man, that was some sick blocks. This game has some opportunity for some really hype moments like that. Just some really like flash of the moment epic plays to happen, which is why it's such a fun speed game. Okay, so now for the big choke boss, Beowulf. Let's hope I can get this release. I need to go ahead and jump cancel his face, as well as have a full level 2 release, which I do, thankfully. There's a certain spot on his eye. I missed it. That's fine. That takes a whole bunch of damage if you release into it. Not a huge deal if we miss it. And there is another chance to show it off later, as there is a boss rush in this game on mission 18. And he is one of the mandatory bosses in that. So to the backup, just jump cancel his eye, try to hit the good spot like that, and do a ton of damage. And clean it up after. That wasn't too bad, even though I missed it. Hopefully I'll get that next time, get to show it off. It's really cool. It does so much damage. So this mission has a really cool gimmick. We picked up this Haywire Neo generator, which we're going to need to power an elevator. But it being a demonic item and stuff, it has a cool gimmick. It gives you unlimited Devil Trigger at the expense of your life energy, which means your health is draining consistently. Which means you got to kill enemies really fast, otherwise you're going to die. But thankfully, you have that unlimited Devil Trigger, so you do a ton of damage. One of the actually cool gimmicks in a Devil May Cry game level. So I'm just going to be switch canceling. The gondola is the same as on the way there, on the way back. Kill the enemies. Once you do, it'll end. And we're going to go ahead and just switch cancel these guys. Try to end this as fast as possible. The double hits are what we're going for. That was a good gondola. But it's not over yet. We still have a bunch of level to do. And if we don't do it fast enough, we will die. There's not any really sections of this level where it's really scary that you're going to die, except for at the very end. And because of that, there's a long section where there's no healing. There's not any enemies you're killing, because you're going to run past a bunch of stuff, because the enemies are optional. So that means that we have to do the whole section really well. Otherwise, we'll get to that area with too little health and we'll die. Not a huge deal dying in this game. You just spawn at a checkpoint. And the checkpoint isn't very far away, but, you know, dying is not cool. So, we're going to try not to. And this is the section. It's got a bunch of these blood goils. but they're all optional. And in this room as well. This room is the scary one, because you have to do some platforming, as we established. DMC platforming isn't very good. And the reason it's so scary is because the only enemy that spawns in this room is this guy, at least at the beginning. So if you don't clean it up real fast, you will die. But now we're safe. There'll be lesser enemies that spawn. Alright, and now we put that away so we're no longer losing health, which is good. And there you saw the first optional boss of the game. If I were to get like an all bosses incentive or something, that would be where I would fight it. I would just go ahead and do that. But we're not going to do that annoying boss. We're going to do this annoying boss. This is Garion. This is the Time Horse. You might remember him from Dark Souls 2. He's basically just a big long test of how good your depth perception is. Because if you can hit him while he's running at you, you can stun him. So obviously, ideally, you just stun lock him the whole time. But it's a little bit hard, especially in this section. And yes, this is the same horse from DMC5. Oh, I did it again. Yeah, this is fine. We can recover. Oh, we landed on him. Okay. Yeah, this is why this boss can be really annoying, because he gets just running around the outside and doesn't really let you get to him. So we really want to try to keep him stun locked on the inside. Oh, he juked me. This is fine. Get a nice release into him, hopefully. Yep. Oh man, really not playing nice. Sorry, Garion. Jesus. That horse is really annoying. He is like one of the big choke points of the run. For that reason in particular. If you don't keep him stun locked in the middle, like the reason that fight went so poorly is because I got knocked back at the beginning. If I didn't get knocked back at the beginning, it would have been a lot easier to keep him stun locked in the middle. But I didn't, so it kind of becomes a cluster. You gotta try to deal with it the best you can. But even so, it's not a huge time loss. So this is where we introduce the chess pieces into the game. There are a bunch of like really cool, unique enemies. They're all based off chess pieces. And yes, they have one for every chess piece. And even a whole chess board later on. Thankfully, they're pretty easy. They have really big hitboxes and they stand still. So they're easy to jump cancel. And that's going to be the best way to do damage to them, at least for now. Until we get the weapon from the next boss. This game has a wide assortment of weapons and different styles that you can use. Almost every single boss that you fight in the game gives you a unique weapon or style. For example, the last boss we fought gives us the ability to slow down time at the expense of having it take up our style slot. That would be a really good option for the run if it didn't remove your Royal Guard. Royal Guard just takes up so much of the DPS of this game that nothing even comes close to helping it out. And just for movement's sake and consistency's sake, we're going to keep Rebellion on us the whole time. That's the sword that I'm using right now. Alright, so coming up we got our second fight with Virgil. This time he has a new weapon. He actually killed Beowulf himself. Beowulf ran away from us and went and fought Virgil for some reason, and Virgil absolutely destroyed him and took his weapon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Release. Okay, so I'm doing a thing here. We're doing a cycle skip. Virgil also has Devil Trigger, as he's your brother. But we're going to skip him using it entirely. If you do a certain amount of damage, you can actually skip him going to Devil Trigger entirely. Like that. It requires a very precise setup. And I did it perfectly there. At the end it becomes a little bit of a mess if you don't do just enough damage, but it's totally fine. That's a really cool skip. We're going to end up doing that hopefully on the final boss as well. Spoilers, it's also Virgil with another new weapon. Now that we beat Virgil, we're going to get his weapon, Beowulf. And we're going to immediately switch to it because we have to. There's a few things in these games called combat adjudicators. They basically test to see if you're good enough with the style system in the game by varying up your combos. And this is the only required one in the whole game. And it actually blocks progress. So that's the reason we equip Beowulf. But also, Beowulf has the highest damage output of any of the weapons. It's the gauntlets. They usually have the highest damage output. And they're especially easy to jump cancel, which makes them really cool for that. And you'll see me do that a lot for the rest of the game now. Here we're introduced to the Dual Hands. Quite possibly the worst enemy in the game. Like I said earlier, it's a big grab bag between some really great enemy designs and some really bad ones. This, if you can't tell, is one of the really bad ones. They can only be hurt from behind, and they like to go wherever the heck they want. Not very good for comboing or styling on them, which is like the whole point of the game. And they're not very good for killing fast either, as they like to go wherever they want. But there is, believe it or not, there is actually one enemy later that is even worse than both the Dual Hands and those floaty guys earlier. Thankfully, we won't see them for a couple missions, though. So here you're really going to see the showcase of jump canceling with Beowulf. It's really easy with this weapon. So we're going to do it a lot. And it does a lot of damage. The reason it's so good for it is because you kick downward at an angle, so you're like dragging across their hitbox, which gives you a whole bunch of time to go ahead and hit that jump input. And it's really good, especially for setups like that. And setups like these chess pieces, as they just stand still. Camera, please. Come and get me. This is, in my opinion, the worst chess piece. I really hate the horses. They're hard to jump cancel, and their attack animations are weird. They have some weird hitboxes. So each chess piece serves a purpose, just like in real chess. And I believe that the horse's purpose is to be as annoying as physically possible. But also, I believe it's a rook, the one I just killed. Its purpose is it can do magical attacks. It has a couple. It has a fireball that it can do, which you'll probably see here. And it can also heal other chess pieces. So if you're not careful, you'll end up healing other chess pieces. You gotta take them out fast. Often you want to take them out first. Or you can take them all out at once. Oh yeah, I framed it. I did it too early. That's fine. This is one of the few missions in the game without a boss fight, and it backs up to another mission that also doesn't have a boss fight that is like the most annoying mission in the game. The next one's really long and tedious, and it's really easy to lose a lot of time because there's a death warp. So hopefully we get to see the best of that mission. Oh, oops. I need some hidden orbs here. Excuse me, Dante, please. Thank you. Nice, an S rank. Like I said before, it's not necessary, but it definitely helps. It can make it so that the last couple of boss fights are a lot easier because you can buy some items. This is the actual most annoying enemy in the game. They're called Fallens. They can no-clip, and also they have shields, and also they don't like to get hit. So they'll just fly away through the walls and you'll never be able to hit them. Thankfully, we can just holy water both of the encounters with them in the game and never have to actually fight them. That's what I opt to use the holy water on instead of the spiders earlier. Because it could be a total nightmare trying to get them to stand still. There's the Leviathan that we were in earlier. And goodbye. So this mission has a special gimmick. It's a puzzle. The whole mission is. Basically, there's these dials on the wall here, right? And the dials change where the location of the rooms, of the doors, where the dials are on the door, right here. It changes where they go. Thankfully, it's consistent, so you can just do the preset pattern. But if you don't know what you're doing, it is so easy to get lost in this mission, as there actually is no correct geography because it changes around every time you hit the buttons. And we're collecting 3 pieces from the 3 different paths in order to go ahead and open an elevator and progress forward. There's the first one. This one's going towards the second one. And on the third one, we have to backtrack through an area with a bunch of spikes on it like this, but it also has blood goils, which are really annoying, and it's totally built for you to have double jump, which we did not buy. So we're going to try to set up a death warp, so we'll grab the item and then go ahead and die on purpose and teleport back to the spinny door. Now unfortunately, you have to not die, which can be a little bit hard sometimes, especially in this game, as it is a hard game. Nice block. I meant to dodge, but that works too. So I'm going to be taking a little bit of intentional damage to damage boost over these. And set me up for that death warp. That's a little risky. I'm glad I DT'd. I would have died if I didn't. Okay. So this is the room that we have to get by, but we also have to hit this thing twice. And we're going to try not to die in the meantime. Okay, we got good RNG with the blood girls. That's cool. So the next room is the room with the item. It's also got a bunch of spinning blades, but we want them to hit us, at least after we pick up the item. Because it'll teleport us back to the door we entered to get into this room. Alright, cool. Got the item. Now I can die. And this may seem slow, but trust me, it's a lot faster. Especially if you set it up optimally. I wanted to be a bit safe. Because going back through that room is a nightmare without a double jump. One more. Nice. And there we go. And that's the end of the mission. That's, I believe, the longest mission in the game, and definitely, in my opinion, the most annoying. And we're coming here near the end of the game now. Only got a couple more missions left. So I guess I'll just explain the plot a little bit to make this make sense. You're trying to stop your brother Virgil, but there's also a B plot going on. There is this chick named Lady, who is actually the boss of this mission. She's just a human who's really good with guns. She's awesome. And she is trying to stop her father from helping Virgil. He is also a human, but he killed her mom. And she wants revenge. And so her and Dante are kind of bickering over like who's gonna get to fight them. And that comes to a head in this mission as you end up fighting her for that. Please, puzzle. Hit the balls together. Thank you. We did it. Thank you. And look, it's Fallen. Bye, Fallen. I wouldn't do that if you were more fun to fight. So basically in this mission we're just collecting 2 items so that we can go ahead and fight Lady and go to the next area. Lady is no match for Dante, but we gotta show her that anyways. Thankfully this is the last time we come to this room. This room is all over the run. It's kind of hectic. I guess you could say it's technically not reused. It's technically not backtracking because the layout of the tower changed, but it's definitely reusing assets. And for some reason the late game is obsessed with hitting balls as a puzzle. Not sure why, but we just gotta deal with it. Now we're gonna be introduced to another chess piece. I believe this one is actually the Rook. And we're going to use him to set up for the Lady boss fight. We can actually get a really cool quick cycle on Lady if we set it up correctly. We need full charged guard and full devil trigger, but we can kill her like in the fastest possible cycle if we have that set up. These enemies can be jump canceled, but it's like extremely difficult. Oops, I accidentally used that. That's fine. I can buy a Devil Star. It won't be a big deal. I have plenty of money. It's more important to get the cycle than it is to worry about the money right now. It's only 3,000. And you do get a ranking penalty on your ranks for using items, but they're pretty minor, and it varies depending on which item you use. And at this point I'm pretty set on the money route. I don't really have to worry about my ranks. Hey look, Artemis. Bye, Artemis. Even though it's like 100% free, it's still not worth picking up. It's that bad. Alright, I'll go ahead and try to get this quick kill on Lady. Yeah, that happens sometimes. It's just RNG. She'll fly away. Oh, I didn't mean to sting her. That's fine. Nice fight. Bye, lady. So, she's a good sport and gives us her rocket launcher. Unfortunately, it's not very good, so we just leave it. Like I said, most bosses give you items such as like the rocket launcher or a new style, and the boss on this mission, it actually gives you a really cool one. It has some bonus features that not a lot of people know about. Oh yeah. First we got to show off the patented Devil May Cry platforming. This is a nightmare. I'm just gonna wait for the slow cycle. This room is definitely built for you to have the trickster style, but it's too slow to go get. And it'll only be level 1, so it wouldn't help you very much. It's really easy to fall and lose a bunch of time, like I just did. But yeah, basically, we're going to fight our doppelganger, which is just a shadow version of ourselves in this mission. And he's going to give us a style called, what do you know, doppelganger. Oh look, also the third optional boss fight. And what that'll do is in change for using our style, it'll let you call upon a second version of yourself, like a shadow, that'll mirror your inputs at the expense of your devil trigger. It's really cool. It's doesn't do that much damage, so it's not worth using in the speedrun. But it has some cool, unique features. If you have a second controller, you can actually plug it in and press start while using Doppelganger and play a 2-player at this game. The other controller will take control of the Doppelganger. So you could play co-op if you wanted to, but only when you're using Devil Trigger. But that in tandem with using a costume that you can get later for Infinite Devil Trigger, you can actually play co-op through the whole game. It's really cool. I've done that a couple times with my friends. Not many people know that, and I believe it does work on the HD version. But it's definitely not advertised anywhere. And I'm going to go ahead and try to get a quick kill on him with a 1 cycle. Him being a shadow, he's very weak to Beowulf, which is a light element. Which happens to work out perfectly because he's also really easy to jump cancel with him. So hopefully we'll just trick him into running into some lights and then jump cancel him to death. You can also knock back his shadow balls, which not a lot of people know as well. You just hit them back. Hopefully we won't see that though, because that's slow. Yeah, yeah. Nice, good 1 cycle. That's one of the easier 1 cycles in the game, but it's still really cool. And that was mission 17. Now we're coming up onto mission 18, which is one of my favorite missions in the game. Definitely a highlight. It's the patented Capcom boss rush. So we're going to go ahead and fight a couple of the bosses. Oh, don't need to go there. That we had already fought previously, but also it has some new content. We're going to come up on that chess board that I talked about earlier, where it's going to have all the chess pieces, and they're actually aligned in the same way a chessboard would be. It's really cool. Thankfully, though, there's actually a way to quickly kill it. If you holy water, it'll let you start attacking the king, which you normally aren't supposed to be able to do. Very good chess. And if you kill the king, of course, it's chess. That's game over. I win. Bye, Fawns. I don't want to fight you. Yeah, so here we're coming up on the actual boss rush. Now, you can do this in a lot of different ways, but there's a statue in the middle of this area where you'll respawn at once you kill a boss. What you're supposed to do is end up creating a circle on the chart, and the fastest way to do that is to fight Cerberus, Beowulf, and what was the other one? And Agni and Rudra. 3 are the harder fights in the game. Very good Cerberus fight. Cerberus being weak to fire and those triple hits from the aerial cross just destroy him. Yeah, so you can just make the small circle on the inside and it'll finish it, but a good incentive would be to fight all the bosses, because it's really cool. Gotta be really careful. I did way more damage to one than the other. Good fight. So now we got our second shot at the good release. The release on Beowulf, it's really hard. Hopefully we can get it this time. I get to show it off. It does so much damage, but it's definitely the hardest release in the game. This camera angle is terrible. I missed it. Dang, that sucks. Oh well. So it's exactly the same fight as before. All the fights are the same, per se. Nothing's really changed between this and the other encounter. This fight is going worse. I missed the release entirely and lost the release. So not much I could have done. Except for, you know, hit the release. There we go. And there we got Royal Guard level 3, which is cool and not so cool. It adds a back-facing move, which I do on accident all the time, and is not fast to do that. And it can mess you up a lot. But it also lets us store more damage, and that's going to be really useful for the last couple boss fights. It will do an insane amount of damage when released at fully charged and with Devil Trigger. So now we're on mission 19. There's only 20 missions in this game, so we're coming towards the end. And we're going to fight a new enemy. These ones are unique because if you knock them back, they'll actually charge back at you. Like they do. Like that. And this is really useful because we can use them to give us guard really easily, because they'll just come right back to you. And that's important because this mission has a lot of gimmicks in it. So we're gonna need full Devil Trigger and at least 2 stocks of our gauge for this room, because this room you can't damage the enemies, you can only break the mirror, and the mirror has a lot of HP. But once you know where they're gonna be, it's pretty fast. So that first room may have been a little slow, but it was only to make the second room fast. It's really easy to die. These enemies do a lot of damage, so I'm trying to concentrate a bit. And this room is also a gimmick room. The way this one works is that if you don't kill the enemies fast enough, that thing in the center will run out of sand, that hourglass. And once it does, it'll spawn you back in the same room, but all the enemies respawned. So you gotta be careful about that. Except for in the speed run, you will never ever run out of time. So now that I got the things that I needed, we're gonna go ahead and do the second to last boss in the game, Arkham, who is Lady's father. But he goes ahead and tricks Virgil and takes his power, but he can't handle it. So he's going to turn into a giant blob monster. A giant blob monster that, may I add, is not very fun to fight. So we're just going to holy water him to death because I don't want to deal with him. But first we got to set up a little damage. Just to make sure we'll get him. This fight also has a cool gimmick. When you get to halfway point, your brother Virgil helps you out. He works the same way as Doppelganger. You can actually plug a second controller in and play co-op here as well, which is really cool. But unfortunately, you don't get to use your style at all, which means you have no royal guard, which is really unfortunate for that fight in particular. So we just holy water him. So this is the final boss of the game. I'm gonna go for a cycle skip like we did, or a phase skip rather, like the same way we did in the second Virgil fight. So I'm gonna concentrate here a bit. Basically, I just need to build up enough resources and get him to just above 40% HP. And then give him everything I got. Here we go. I just barely missed it. I jump canceled a little bit late at the end there. That's fine though. He wouldn't have gone to Devil Trigger at all if I had gotten it. That's a really hard skip. And now he's dead. GG. So that was Devil May Cry 3 by me, Waifu. Thanks for watching.